Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ryan.
Likewise. Let me just start right into it here. Can you give us an overview of Cyabra and the problem that it's solving?
Absolutely. So the problem that we believe in right now is that the lines online have become completely blurred, right? Every single government and enterprise brand around the world has or is operating in a very polluted information environment. And a lot of what we see, watch, and read online, it might seem organic, and it might, but at the end of the day, we see that there's a lot of coordinated and inauthentic behavior that is driving impact, that is changing opinions over time. And so the way that we look at it is we analyze the actor, the behavior, and the content. We need to make sure that people and organizations that are operating our system have the ability to understand how things are getting amplified. Should we trust it? Should we rely upon it? And whether it is trying to shape perception. And at the end of the roll, you turn that evidence into very clear mitigation steps.
Okay, that's very interesting and really poignant for our time right now, no question. Why has digital trust become such a critical issue for governments and enterprises today?
Ryan, we've been at it for 8 years. And so for us, it may not be a surprise, but at the end of the day, AI has collapsed completely the cost of generating fake content and creating fake personas, bots, sock puppets, spam accounts over social media, you name it. And so it's very easy to see the new reality where platforms have the ability to shape reputation, markets, policy-making decisions that are being driven on a day-to-day basis. And the gap that we are trying to grasp here and to bridge over is that you see something on social media and it feels like, something feels off in a way. And I'm sure you've seen it a couple of times. Absolutely. At the very least, right? Absolutely. And then our goal is to say, well, hold on a second. Before you do something, before you react as the largest food and beverage company or a large retail company, before you do something about it, you need to understand whether you should ignore, monitor very closely because it might turn into a storm, or you should genuinely do something about it, right? And so that's the goal, because it's become so cheap and so accessible. AI has become so cheap and so accessible that the challenge has become mainstream and everybody can really orchestrate something nowadays.
Okay, and that leads right into my next question here. How does Cyabra's technology identify coordinated manipulation and inauthentic accounts online?
So there are actually 3 main layers that we touched upon a little bit earlier that are part of the larger operating system that we provide to our customers. The first one is the actor, so kind of understanding the source, where it's coming from. The behavior, which is how do you push, how do you propagate, how do you create an influence and make something become impactful over time? What's the speed and the strength at which the snowball becomes a snowball, as a matter of fact? And then last but not least, it's the content. So the whole framework is ABC, the actor, the behavior, and the content. And the content might be, how toxic is it? How spammy of a behavior and a type of conversation is it from a narrative standpoint? And then are we even looking at a video that's real, or is it a deep fake of the CEO of a publicly traded company that's doing something? How weird it would be if I was the deep fake of myself, actually doing something as the CEO of Cyabra, right? So the authenticity of those signals, of those accounts, temporal behavior and patterns that we look at, the coordination across different networks and different narratives, which allows us to understand what is being pushed out there. And all of that is just sitting under a very large, sort of 8 years of data corpus that allows the system to really be that analytical infrastructure and not the truth arbiter.
Okay, interesting. That's very, very interesting. Listen, what differentiates Cyabra from social listening or cybersecurity platforms?
We play very well, and we actually partner up with these folks actually quite often. Social listening at the end of the day is a very established industry that's looking at what is being said and how loud is it. Cybersecurity is going to be looking at, you could say, sort of finding a way to protect your networks, whether it's external or internal networks. But neither really combines that ability to understand the coordinated behavior, like you said, the authenticity, the impact under one view. And so from our perspective, what really drives the possibility of partnering up with those companies and be who we are is, first of all, 8 years of data corpus, the ability to label case studies over case studies and researchers for the last 8 years and having over 150 of them is a real differentiator, because we've been at it when people didn't think about it. And now it allows us to train and continuously improve ourselves. Second thing, really related to national security. Being deployed in many different countries around the world across different deployments, which are within national security and defense organizations, really gives us the trust and the credibility at very high stakes level. And that combination is, we believe, gives us the unique advantage of being who we are.
Okay, very, very interesting. Can you share a recent example of how Cyabra helped an organization uncover an inauthentic influence campaign?
Absolutely. Don't be mad at me. I may not be able to name the customer.
That's okay.
But I'll give you a true story, so I apologize in advance. So there's a global Fortune 5000 brand that thought was actually facing a huge organic backlash because of the launch of a new product. And so you see at first that when you deep dive into it within minutes, you quickly realize that not only do you have thousands of accounts that are involved, same messaging, same temporal timestamps, and same type of amplification. And you can see that within minutes, not within hours, not within days. It really looked like it was orchestrated from the ground up. So really, you could see, just using our product, that the first response should have been, without using us, oh, we have to do something about it. We have to say that it's not our fault. We have to say that we are not responsible for what's being said. But the reality is, once they understood the nature of that storm, they understood that it was incredibly highly coordinated. We're talking more than 25% of inauthenticity. That's enormous. That's way higher than the benchmark. The narratives were flying all over the place over social media and traditional media outlets. And so you could clearly see that a few main orchestrators and a few main operators on social were driving the vast majority of the crowd. So they actually changed their entire crisis management response based on that, utilizing their chief communications and chief marketing people within the organization. And that's it. They were able to act proportionately based on the evidence and not necessarily based on the sort of front stage level of evidence.
Yeah, totally get it. Now listen, I've been an internet veteran since it came around. Okay. I've seen plenty of this stuff, but recently we've seen increasing concerns around AI generated content and deepfakes, which is much harder. How is Cyabra positioned to address these emerging threats?
We have been developing a deepfake detection solution for the last few years. And this has always been part of our strategy, right? When you talk about authenticity, you can't just be the solution that is able to say, here are the bots. You also have to say, here are the bots, here are the generated pieces of content, like you say, the deepfakes. And so it is actually the same framework of thinking, right? It's the same AI that has become much cheaper and much more accessible over any platform you can think of. Most of those AI patterns and platforms have a great tool for the day-to-day obvious reasons. But it also makes everybody more, well, I say gullible because of the nature of those things. And so it's going to be the same thing for the deepfake detection. It is a very strong pillar and a very strong part of our operating system, but it is one pillar. It's to understand the authenticity of the content as much as we would need to understand whether you need to react if the impact is very big because of a narrative and an audience that is very important for you as a brand.
Okay, I think that's the right way to go about it. Look, what industries are driving the strongest demand for Cyabra's platform today?
Oh, you know what? For the longest time ever, we've been close to 100% revenue being driven by national security and defense. Mm-hmm. I'm very happy to say that in the last 2 years, this has started to shift much more towards enterprise brands worldwide. Today, actually, the mix is roughly 75% approximately for the national security, government, and defense side of the house from a revenue standpoint. And then the rest of the 25% is the enterprise customers. And so we're talking about on the national security side, we've been talking with working with NATO. We've been working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of South Korea, and so on and so forth. And then on the enterprise side, we have been working with companies like PepsiCo, companies like Activision, Elf Beauty, and even Golin, who's now part of Omnicom. So this is kind of the clear distinction where the company is. It is a dual-use technology, just like a smaller cousin of a Palantir, as you can make the math. We've also raised money from Founders Fund. If you can do the math as well, it's Peter Thiel and everybody else. We're very proud of our roots. We're very proud of the geekiness of the product and the people in it. And the latest numbers from Q1 were $7 million of annual recurring revenue at roughly 86% gross margins. Last time I checked 2 years ago, we were not even making 70%. So it's going up.
Okay, and going up meaningfully. Where are you seeing the greatest growth opportunities?
I think that the industry is about to become a version 2.0 of itself. And I'm just so glad that we're here to say it, right? It's the beautiful thing about it, because we've been at it for 8 years. So category leadership is a very important point for us, making sure that narrative intelligence, disinformation security, deepfake detection, that we are there, that we are at the podium, at the entry of the realm, and we provide a valuable and trusted solution to the organizations that rely on us. So the category leadership is a very important one. We need to continue growing. 7 million of annual recurring revenue. Sure, we were making 2-3 million not even 2 years ago, right? And it's growing well. But I can tell you that the next quarters are going to be as good as the previous one, which was our first quarter as a public company, by the way. There is a massive public sector opportunity that's only growing by the week, because governments around the world have a significant portion of their investment into technologies that can give them clarity into that decision-making process. And then making sure that the demand for digital trust is not only getting stronger, but it's structural and it is growing at the right pace. And we are there when it happens.
Okay, perfect. And speaking of the next several quarters here, what are the key priorities and milestones that investors should be watching over the next 12 months?
So from our perspective, the 12 months is going to be, from a very selfish perspective from Cyabra. By the end of the year, we need to add at the very least 50% year-over-year growth, keep the margins range anywhere between 85 to 90%, very much what we're looking at right now, and it's completely feasible, as you can understand. And then continuously showing to the market, as a recently publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, that we are not only worthy of being where we are, but we are worthy of leading the pack. That's exactly what we should be, and we are going to do that in the next few quarters. We're very confident about it.
Okay, and then looking a little bit further ahead, as misinformation and coordinated influence operations continue to evolve, what gives you the confidence that Cyabra can remain ahead of these threats and continue delivering value to customers?
It started with a very strong founding team, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about my two co-founders, which led information warfare for the Special Operations Command. It became 8 years of building, researching, and developing the operating system that we sell to dozens of different organizations around the world. And then now it's continued with multiple offices around the world, delivering the solution over different geographies, different organizations and industries eventually, with a very, very strong leadership from a board perspective as well, with Josette Sheeran, with Mike Pompeo, with Jim Flanagan, and so on and so forth. So we have the people in place, we have the structure in place, and the demand is only going up. I think that we have all the ingredients to make a great salad. That's it.
Yeah, it sure seems like that. I don't think you're going to have any problem with demand. That's at least my take here. Look, thanks for joining us today, Dan. This is really interesting to me, and I look forward to future follow-ups.
Likewise. Thank you for the time, Ryan.
You're very welcome. Folks, that was Dan Brahmy, CEO of Cyabra, ticker CYAB on the NASDAQ. Thanks for joining us for another All Access. We'll see you next time.